This is Gene DeLisio with a featured sports interview from WDLB and WOSQ. Terry Buss was a standout athlete at Marshfield High School in the early 1970s. He transferred to Marshfield from Wausau as a junior in the fall of 1970 and became one of Marshfield's elite football players. As a junior in 1970, Terry ran for 1,181 yards and 13 touchdowns, rushing for more than 100 yards in 7 games, including 197 and 2 touchdowns in one ball game against Merrill. As a senior in 1971, Terry did miss one game due to injury, but still rushed for 949 yards and 13 touchdowns, and ran for another 190 yards and 2 more scores again in the Merrill game. Terry was also a standout in basketball, averaging 13 points per game as a junior and 11 points per game as a senior. That includes scoring 28 points and grabbing 16 rebounds in one ball game against Neillsville as a senior in 1972. Terry was inducted into the Marshfield Tiger Athletic Hall of Fame with the inaugural class of 2006.
Well, thank you, first of all, and I feel completely honored, sort of humbled. I didn't know what to expect when I came here, and then to be in the company of all these other remarkable athletes, stories. It was really kind of moving. I felt a little unprepared. Not much. I don't usually have too much to say about things, but it was a great honor, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, you certainly had a great career at Marshfield High School. Can you kind of reflect on some of the big moments and some of the highlights you recall?
At Marshfield, I just think the whole situation. I think when I moved here, Marshfield I think was coming off some sort of a losing streak, and they had some coaches here, Jack Jansen and Denny Myers and Joe Kretz, and that were really young, enthusiastic, and they got everybody really involved. A lot of people out for the program, a lot of people moving in the same direction, a lot of fun, a lot of inspiration. As far as to single out one particular moment, I don't know that I could do that. But I just remember the whole experience was really, really positive,
For people who never saw you play, they see your name in the record book, but didn't really see you play football. Tell us what your game was like and what made you the player that you were.
Well, I think I really, that's a good question. I mean, at this point, I think I should probably be playing like offensive guard for a Pee Wee team or something like that, but I really enjoyed football. I was really passionate about it. In terms of, I like to attack. I like to hit hard. I like to be explosive. I just enjoyed every part of the game. It was just so much, a part of my life. Watching my brother play and watching, the Packers play. I mean, there was nothing else. Not nothing else. That's kind of a, But I just think that just the passion I really had for football was. Kind of made me what I was, I guess, in those days. And it sounds kind of corny, but we had some great players around us. We had some wonderful linemen in those days, opening up holes, and great coaches, and it just a matter of being at the right place at the right time.
Terry, you came down to Marshfield from Wausau, and of course Wausau High had that tremendous program with Win Brockmeyer as the coach, and some great names and some great talent there. What was it like going from that program, maybe the premier program in the state, and coming to Marshfield, a program that had not had a great deal of success?
That's a great question, and actually that's tough because I did start as a sophomore at Wausau, and I really didn't. I wanted to play for Win Brockmeyer, And it was tough. It really was tough. And I didn't know anything about Marshfield. And the first day I got here, I met Bill Kramer, a couple other people that were on the team here. They came to my house the first day. I remember that day. I mean, they were great guys. Accepted me into the community and the program, and met Coach Jansen, the coaches. And, I guess Brockmeyer was sort of from the old school, the WOSQ program. And these guys were, they had a lot to offer for the future. And they were young guys and really energetic, and it was real positive. I mean, it took me a while, of course, but after we got going, there was no looking back, and I think we had a couple, some pretty good teams in those days.
What was Brockmeyer like to play for?
When I say old school, Brockmeyer was old school. It was run right, run left, single wing. He believed in, blocking. He believed in tackling. If you couldn't block and you couldn't tackle, I mean, that was, and I think the coaches here felt the same way. But that's, when you went out for football at Wausau, there were 120 kids, and you had to know your fundamental. You had to know how to block, and you had to know how to tackle. And if you could do that, he was easy to get along with. If you didn't do that, he wasn't easy to get along with. So that was Win Brockmeyer.
Can you talk about some of the teammates you played with here in Marshfield, Terry, what they meant to your team? I remember Bill Kramer was the first guy I met. He was, and I think he's a professor in Connecticut now. He was, he was a real level-headed guy, real strong, real physical guy that just gave me a lot of confidence, that, boy, there's going to be somebody blocking for me here. But other than that, we had, Uthmeyer and Adler and Ken Hyman, Zophie, Schultz, all these guys, they were just all good guys, all good athletes. It was just a great chemistry that we had. Bruce King Ken Shunk was the quarterback when I first got here, and he was a great quarterback. Then Bruce King was the quarterback my senior year, and he could throw the ball about 80 yards, and usually did. And if we could have a receiver that could get that far down the field and catch it, we'd usually score, Well, you had some great teams. You mentioned that coaching staff also. Tell us about what they meant to you and how you felt about playing for those guys.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most important thing. And I think and you asked about Win Brockmeyer, and Win Brockmeyer was a great coach. He was from the old school, kind of a legend. He came over to the Marshfield staff, and I think that was the most refreshing thing. Is you had Jack Jansen, you had Dennis Myers, and you had Joe Kretz, and they were young guys, and they had a new program that they're putting in. They had to sell it because Marshfield hadn't won for a while. And they generated a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of interest, got people out, out. There were 18 people coming out for football before I got here. And I think that first year, maybe there was 38, next year 50, so it was just that enthusiasm, I think, that they kind of generated, that got, that really built the program.
Well, you had some great success, Terry, in football, but also were involved in some other sports. Any reflections on the other sports you were involved with here?
Well, I guess I really enjoyed track. We made it to state in the mile relay, and I enjoyed it because my kid actually got involved with track, and he made it to state in the mile relay, and so we'd always compare times and things like that. And actually, my kid probably was a better athlete than me, but he late bloomer. He's about 6'3". He's about 100, but now he's only starting to fill out. He's going to college now, so if he had another year in high school, he's going out for crew at University of Minnesota. So I wish him luck there. But I guess
your other sports here.
Oh, I enjoyed track and basketball. I was just a hatchet, man. I mean, I was never I think I set the record for falling out in 5 minutes in the Marshfield game. I'd get a lot of rebounds, but I'd probably set the record for the most air balls that there were in this history of Marshfield sports too. So I enjoyed all of them. Coach Risto. I just heard we were talking about Coach Risto over there, and great memories of Coach Risto. He was a nut, but a fun guy. Geez, don't tell him I said that, but and Coach Hooter on track. They were all great coaches. Great people.
Terry, tell us about the circumstances that brought you down to UW-Madison.
Well, my brother had played for Madison at a time when they'd lost a few games before that. He was, and I was actually going to go to Nebraska, and I thought I signed a letter of intent to go to Nebraska. My parents really wanted me to go to Madison. They wanted to see me play, and I just, I was wrestling with it a lot, and I guess all things. I decided to go to Madison, and it turned out okay because we ended up beating Nebraska when we played them in a football game. So, I guess that it was a difficult decision, but that's, now I've got my wife, my kids, everybody. The decision must have been a good one, because if I didn't make that decision, it's certainly, my life would be totally different. So I'm happy, with what turned out.
Any highlights about your Badger career you can think of?
Well, there's the highlights and there's lowlights. I guess the highlight was, if you want to talk about football and highlights and things like that, is we were playing Purdue. I intercepted a pass in the last minute. We were able to kick a field goal and win the game. It was tied at that point. And another situation, which maybe was a low light, was we were playing Ohio State, and they had just driven like 70 yards, and they were on our 2-yard line, and for some odd reason they decided to throw a pass. Well, I happened to pick it off, and I ran about 80 yards and kind of running around all over the field, thinking maybe I could score. And somebody came up from behind, and all the crowd, you could kind of hear the crowd of Madison, going, yeah, the crescendo was building up. And all of a sudden, somebody came from behind and just poked the ball out of my hands. And so I fumbled. Ohio State recovered, and so all I had to face was all these defensive linemen, and everybody else that were just just upset that they had to stay on the field for another 80-yard drive, and to hear 80,000 people going from this crescendo to boo, just solid boos. So that was probably the low light of the whole thing. But ups and downs,
And how about your career after college and after athletics?
Well, what I did was I signed with a team in Canada. I went and played for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for a little while. I didn't know what I probably should have stuck around and tried to play in the. I was a little burnt out at that time about football, but I did play up in Canada for a little while. They just only kept 12 people per team, Americans. So you were, if somebody get hurt, they would juggle you and things like that. So got a little tiring, and I decided to stop at that time. But now I'm running a roofing business over in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Live in Appleton. Have 3 kids, nice wife, kind of settled in, so everything seems to be going pretty good. Except I got a couple hips replaced and shoulders replaced, and other than that, everything's fine.
Former Marshfield Tiger sports standout Terry Buss inducted into the Marshfield Tiger Athletic Hall of Fame in 2006. This is Gene DeLisio reporting for WDLB and WOSQ.